Hello, and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be discussing the topic of sanctuary cities and the problems associated with the certain protection immigrants are given. For those of you who do not know what a sanctuary city is, a city whose municipal laws tend to protect undocumented immigrants from deportation or prosecution despite federal immigration law. Now bear in mind that while the federal government can still enforce immigration laws within sanctuary cities are under no obligation to follow any laws that could impede it on the rights of migrants, or they may be given certain additional rights in sanctuary cities that they would not be given anywhere else. Sanctuary cities do not have to ask about your immigration status, disclose that information to authorities, or, most importantly, deny you city services based on your immigration status. And this comes with a whole host of issues. For one, when police officers refuse to report any illegal immigrants to federal authorities, illegal immigrants with criminal backgrounds remain unpunished. This is in part due to the already lax sentencing guidelines already in place in certain sanctuary cities. Sometimes criminals are let free, without any type of due process. One example of this is when 5 Venezuelan migrants were arrested for attacking a police officer in New York. However, only 2 of the 5 attackers wound up getting arrested and convicted, and this was after they released and arrested again in New Mexico. And not only were the other attackers released, they were released without bail. And this not by any means a special case when it comes to persecuting migrants who are criminals. In Chicago, there is a law called the Trust Act, which forbids local police from participating in immigration enforcement. This is based on the premise that immigrants who have been victimized will then cooperate with the police on certain investigations. However, while this may protect migrants who happen to be victims of crimes, it does nothing to actually persecute migrants who are actually criminals. For example, if somebody is in the United States illegally and that person happens to commit a crime, they run the risk of getting deported back to their home country. Then the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, files a charging document called a Notice to Appear that alleges the basis for removal. Then a DHS attorney prosecutes the case, after which an immigration judge decides if the government has the legal authority to remove the non-citizen. The non-citizen may be held in a detention center while they await their court date. The non-citizen appears before an immigration judge during the deportation process. If the judge rules that deportation should proceed, the receiving country must agree to accept the person and issue travel documents. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, can then carry out the removal order. However, if that illegal immigrant happens to get arrested and hold for ICE in a sanctuary city, the local police have absolutely no obligation to uphold their detainer to ICE. A detainer is essentially just a notice that DHS issues to federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies to inform the law enforcement that ICE intends to assume custody of an individual into their custody. But oftentimes, they are released without the notice of Immigrations and Customs, which then leads to them playing a game of cat and mouse, where the federal authorities have to apprehend the fugitive again before they commit more crimes, which then leads to a lot of illegal migrants becoming repeat offenders and not being held accountable to the law. One notable example is Juan Francisco Lopez Sanchez. Sanchez was freed from deportation by the San Francisco County Sheriff and shortly after allegedly murdered a woman named Catherine Steinle in San Francisco. Now, even though the jury found him not guilty, his prior felony convictions should have been enough to deport him and blacklist him from ever re-entering the country. However, he has been deported a number of 5 times throughout his entire life, and yet was released literally the day before he carried out the murder of Catherine, someone who should not have even been in this country in the first place, yet was given safe haven and was still able to commit crimes in San Francisco. And it's not just regular everyday citizens that are affected by these policies, but they also affect law-abiding immigrants. A study conducted by the Center for Immigration Studies show that immigrants are oftentimes more likely to report crimes being committed against them than your average everyday citizen. It goes on to say that migration advocates have long asserted that local law enforcement agencies should not cooperate with federal immigration authorities because doing so would cause immigrants to avoid reporting crimes out of fear of deportation. This justification for sanctuary jurisdictions has always been dubious, but now we have data that directly refute it. Starting in 2017, the Department of Justice added a citizenship question to its annual National Crime Victimization Survey, NCVS, which is the largest and most authoritative survey of crime victims. The 2017-19 NCVS indicates that the whole basis for sanctuary polices is a myth. It turns out that crimes against immigrants are reported to police at rates that match or often exceed those for crimes against the U.S.-born. It also goes on to say, non-citizen Hispanics theoretically should be the most fearful of police because a large share are in the country illegally. In government surveys such as the NCVS, we estimate that roughly 2/3 of non-citizen Hispanics are either illegal immigrants or live with one. And yet the NCVS shows that 57% of serious crimes against non-citizen Hispanics were reported to police, compared with 53% for the U.S.-born. This also ties into a similar problem that we are now experiencing in the United States, with the new Venezuelan gang known as Tren de Aragua. Tren de Aragua has not only infiltrated every single sanctuary city in the United States, but it also has been terrorizing and targeting other Venezuelan migrants. And it's very unfortunate that the exact same people who are escaping violence from gangs just like Tren de Aragua are seeing themselves being victimized yet again from these exact same criminals. And yet, those criminals won't be fully persecuted to the full extent of the law, due to the poor policies that sanctuary cities have, as we see more criminal Latin American gangs cross the border illegally. So will the crime rate go up in these cities where these people have sanctuary from federal immigration law? And you don't have to take my word for it. A recent article from 2023 shows the sharp increase in Venezuelan arrests following the mass migration of Venezuelans to Chicago. It then goes on to say, the number of Venezuelan-born people arrested by Chicago police this year is up 2,538% compared to 2022, according to data provided by the police department. It's up 11,333% compared to 2021. While a handful of Venezuelan-born arrestees are accused of serious crimes like shooting another migrant, robbing a Divvy employee, and stabbing someone in a dispute over bathroom cleanliness, most of the allegations are more mundane. Shoplifting is among the top charges filed against Venezuelan-born people in Chicago this year. And the most frequent location we found for Venezuelan-born folks to be arrested is the Macy's flagship store in the Loop. I also just want to put this into perspective. This migrant crisis has not just reached its peak yet. It has only just begun. And from this point on, we will not only see more violent crime being caused by migrants, but also migrants being arrested and then let out back into the streets the next day. Thank you for watching Virtue Ethics and Masculine Morals. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.